Raise your hand if you do not think children with cancer who are American citizens should be deported.
Do not think.
Looks like it's all the Democrats and none of the Republicans.
Welcome back, YouTube. Welcome to the Palmetto Perspective. This is Trey Sean, and we're back with another one. All right, so this is going to be another quick one. This is about the hearing that they had about the deporting the kids with the cancer. I actually have deporting the children with the child with the cancer. I actually have some thoughts on this. Then I want to go over them after we go over this. But I just want you guys to pay attention to how they frame this question. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Thank you, Chairman. The silence. I want to talk a little bit more about the silence. I'm going to invite Professor Raskin in on this. Professor, we have alleged that this legislation, which would further deport kids with cancer who are American citizens, that would deport and exile American citizens, that would allow the firing of veterans who work at the Department of Justice, that would allow the hiring of January 6th rioters at the Department of Justice. We've alleged that that is cruel and incompetent. My colleagues across the other side have said nothing. We've given them multiple opportunities to defend it. Now, I do my CLE, my continued legal education, but I'm a little rusty. I've been here for 13 years. You're not rusty. In the law, I remember something called like an adoptive admission. So if I say to the other side, what you're doing is cruel, what you're doing is incompetent, and it's just like zip, heads down, kind of like what my kids do when you catch them with their hand in the cookie jar and they don't want to talk about it. What is an adoptive admission? What does it mean that they're being so silent? And what could you conclude in the law that they've been accused of being cruel and incompetent and deporting kids with cancer who are citizens, and they say nothing? What's an adoptive admission?
Well, an adoptive or a constructive admission, as it's sometimes called, means in certain contexts that you can construe someone's silence as agreement with a particular proposition. In criminal court, of course, you can't do that. If someone chooses not to testify in criminal court, the privilege against self-incrimination under the Fifth Amendment means that the prosecutors can't get up and say,
I'm going to challenge you though, Professor. Now, say somebody's accused of murdering their wife and it's not in court and it's, proceedings have not happened yet, they're a suspect, and you say very publicly to that person, you murdered your wife, and you say it in front of like 10 people and they just put their head down. Doesn't the law say that an ordinary innocent person in that environment, not in court, would defend themselves and say, no, I didn't do that?
Absolutely. And in fact, in civil court, a refusal to testify can be used against you, and your silence can be constructively ascribed to your agreement with the proposition.
Okay, let me try it one more time. Your bill will deport more kids who are American citizens with cancer.
I don't think they want to answer that.
The silence is deafening.
Would the
It tells
gentleman
us
yield?
everything we need.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Let's do it a different way. How about this? Raise your hand if you do not think children with cancer who are American citizens should be deported.
Do not think.
Looks like it's all the Democrats and none of the Republicans. Now, Mr. Swalwell, if I could just continue and ask a question, because you raise an interesting point on the sort of adoptive or constructive admission.
What did you say? Your your bill will deport more kids, U.S. citizen kids with cancer? Yes or no? And it's like, you get what we're trying to do, right? And you're understanding the reason why we're trying to do it, right? Because we're not trying to have people take advantage. And listen, man, like, I don't understand why people aren't getting mad at the parents for playing these games. You feel me? Like, why isn't nobody mad at the parent? Okay, so it's okay for, the parents to put themselves in a situation like this and have a kid knowing that this isn't legal, or knowing that you're not here legally. Because I know at some point that the thoughts pass through your head, like, if I get caught, what am I going to do? And yes, of course, the bill is going to deport. I mean, if the kid has, come on, that's not the government's fault. That's the parents' fault. The parents' fault. Like, them coming here and then having babies, knowing that they're not here legally. Like, come on. At some point, people have to take some type of responsibility for themselves, or some type of accountability, right? If I know I'm not supposed to do something, and it's time for me to deal with the consequences, I can't go blaming other people. No, I have to deal with it. So yes, if a child has, it's sad, yes, but there are laws in place, right? I cannot go right now over to Europe, like, sneak over there. I cannot sneak over there. I just can't. I cannot go in there. I can't, right? You shouldn't be able to here. I don't think that is fair for y'all to blame the Trump administration, for a decision that the parents made. Before we go any further in this, I kind of want to break this down real quick, because a lot of people may not know exactly how birthright citizenship works, and what exactly they're specifically talking about when they're saying the kid with cancer. And I'm going to say this right now. I don't appreciate any of them using the kid parents doing it, and I don't agree with. And I say the parents because the mom came here illegally, knowing that there would be a chance that she might get deported again, right? Thought that if she was to have a kid, that she would be able to stay here. She gets caught. Obviously, she doesn't want to leave the baby here. Okay. So that automatically puts a bad look out there on the Republican Party. But and I got a perfect example, right? If I go into a house and it says no trespassing, right? And I go in there, I think I'm sneaking past the cameras, I go in there, I grab something, and I leave. I get away with it for now, I make it back to the house, I'm good. I'm not caught, I'm good. 3 months later, I'm out going to the store. I'm walking with my brother. We're going to the store to get some snack cakes. And cops come, whoop, pull me over. Hey, you're under arrest. Who is this? Is your brother? Yeah, that's my brother. All right. Is there anywhere for your brother to go? You're going to be going to jail. You committed a crime. If there is nowhere for your brother to go, you're probably going to go in the foster home or foster care if there isn't an adult, right? Right. Who's going to be at fault though? Me. I took that risk. All right. So, birthright citizenship. What is it? Anyone born within the states, is a citizen at birth, regardless of their parents' citizenship or immigrant status, right? Now, what they're arguing now, this is going to be the big thing right here, right? This is going to all fall into the 14th Amendment, right? And this is what Donald Trump is going. This is what his executive order has to do with, right? It's the Section 1, right? All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. The thing that they're getting caught up on is all persons, right? All persons. Everyone falls under persons, right? However, this is where it gets complicated, right? Because the 14th Amendment was passed with the 13th and the 15th Amendment, right? They were known as the Civil War Amendment, right? Part of the Reconstruction era after the Civil War. So it was those three amendments were passed, right? The 13th Amendment was to end slavery, right? The 14th Amendment is what we're talking about now, not the naturalized or the birthright citizenship. And then there was the 15th Amendment, which was the voting, right? So the 14th Amendment was made because initially black people or African Americans were not considered Americans. And it goes back to a court case, right? It goes back to a court case from 1844. It was a New York court case, Lynch versus Clark, right? It was one of the first cases to address the concept of birthplace-based citizenship in the United States, right? So there was, her name was Julia Lynch. She was born in New York, right? Her parents were Irish. They ended up leaving. She was born in America, and they ended up leaving, right? And they weren't really intending on, like making her an American citizen, right? So she spent the rest of her, 20 odd years in Ireland, and then later on, a court decided to use the principle, just solely or birthplace-based citizenship to decide that she was an American citizen, at the time of her birth, right? So 13 years after that, right, there was the Dred Scott decision in 1857, right, that addressed the question really of whether descendants of people who were enslaved and brought to the United States were citizens entitled to the relevant rights and privileges granted to citizens under the Constitution. And before I go any further, this is where I'm getting this information from. This is America Immigration Council.org. 10 years after the Lynch and Clark case, it was the Dred Scott decision in 1857, right, which would, like I said, address the question pretty much whether or not the people who were enslaved, and brought here, if they were entitled to the same rights or privileges as citizens under the constitutions. They passed the 14th Amendment, which granted certain rights for African Americans in all the states, right, following the end of the Civil War, which was pretty much like, okay, we messed up on the Dred Scott decision. And let's see, I'm going to show you the Dred Scott decision exactly. Here it is, right? You guys can read this on your own time. All this brings us back to Donald Trump's executive order, right? Protecting the meaning and the value of American citizenship, right? He wants to stop the birthright citizenship, right? And the reason he's doing that because he feels that initially, the 14th Amendment doesn't apply, right? It doesn't apply to illegal immigrants. And the reason it doesn't is because it was initially made for African Americans to be seen as citizens, right? Because they were enslaved, right? And they were not initially seen as U.S. citizens, right? Which is why you have the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, right? Those three in part played the biggest roles on African Americans and their rights as far as their rights in the United States as citizens. Okay, and now that brings me to, here. So here you have the Plier versus Doe case that they're probably going to be referencing also and when they have this upcoming court case with the Supreme Court. So a class action challenged the constitutionality of Texas Education Code Section 21.031, which prohibited the use of state funds for the education of children who had not been legally admitted to the U.S. Plaintiffs in the lawsuit argued that this law violated the Equal Protection Clause with regard to children of undocumented aliens, and the lower courts agreed. Texas asserted three justifications for the law on the appeal, right? It argued that the law was intended to prevent an influx of illegal immigrants into Texas, to alleviate the burdens on the educational system caused by educating undocumented aliens, and to alleviate the burdens created by educating children who are unlikely to remain in the state and contribute to it, right? Which sounds like a reasonable reason to not want to do that, right? So they actually had this case, and I believe that they lost this case actually. But you can see even in 1982, they were already talking about, the issues of, spending, state money or state funds you know, to educate children who may not even remain, you know, or contribute to society. Because, yeah. So let's see. But yeah, so I'm saying this to say that I think Donald Trump I think that Donald Trump may actually have a point here, and I think that he may actually have a case here, because nowhere in there does it actually say anything about people taking advantage, because that's what they're doing initially. They're taking advantage of the law. You know, they're taking advantage of the words, and they're mixing the words. But if you look at the whole context and everything that goes into, you know, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, and the 13th Amendment, you know, and why they're put together and what they were meant for, it has zero, absolutely nothing to do with illegal immigrants, especially taking advantage of, you know, the system, the court systems. But okay, so you see why they're not answering that question, right? Because they can't answer that question, because the way that the question is being framed, if they were to agree to it, then it would literally go against everything that they're pushing for, right? But then if they say no, you know, I'm not for, you know, I am for, you know, deporting kids with cancer, then obviously it makes them look bad, right? Yeah, so that's my quick take on that, man. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe. Yeah, if you got any questions, whatever, you know, hit the comments. Yeah, and we can definitely debate, go back and forth with it. All right, peace.